Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for another one of these things I do when my son is napping. Another Greg in your ear. Today we're going to do Mass Builder because it's giant robots and it's cool, and there's been enough of an update to kind of go through a few things and talk about some stuff. They've added some new guns and things like that, but I haven't really played with them because one of the things that I've discovered over the course of playing the game is that it's not really a futuristic sci-fi game. It's a fantasy setting with big clunky robot-looking armor. If you think of the game as more like a Musou title, where you're basically like Dynasty Warriors or something like that, where you just choose like which of your Dynasty Warriors you want to be, and then you have like, Lu Jun has a spear, and Lu Bu has a halberd that he wields like a sword. He just carries it in one hand and whacks you with it, or at least he used to. I think they changed a lot of things. Last time I played was Dynasty Warriors 4 or 5, so there's been a lot of changes to that series since the last time I played. But anyway, though, the reason I say this is because I really like guns in Armored Core. And in Armored Core, they had this thing where you would have you'd have your weapons, and it would get you through an entire mission for the most part. Like a single primary weapon would be strong enough or have enough ammo to get you through everything that you were going to see. Most of the time. There were some exceptions. Like Last Raven was pretty difficult, and so they would throw things at you that you might not necessarily have enough ammo for just because they would be very evasive or that type of thing. But anyway, the point was that you could reliably build a gun mag, and in fact that was really the only viable build, was to have guns. And you would run through your ammo, and then you had this cool thing where you could like drop your gun and then pull out a pistol or whatever out of some compartment somewhere. So you just like fire all your ammo, drop the entire gun, and then pull out another gun. And when you dropped your gun, it would make you lighter, so you'd be even faster. So like having dual pistols would be kind of a step up. So it wasn't like you were in bad shape until you were totally out of ammo. And then if you really wanted, you could have like a little laser sword on your arm, and the laser sword never ran out of ammo, and that was its one saving grace. And otherwise, it was kind of a terrible weapon because things would be moving so fast you could never hit anything with the sword. I mean, like there was a lot of like you'd be in the air most of the time. So going into this game, I was thinking, I'm gonna have these guns, and that's gonna be my primary weapon because it's like the future, and whatever the sword is made out of, I'm sure I'm shooting that out of the barrel. But it turns out that the ammunition you're given is made out of cork, and it really doesn't do very much. Like it's something. It's maybe like paper mache or cork or some really like lightweight material. I wouldn't even say it's like rubber. It's definitely something that I wouldn't expect to do much harm. Because you'll spend like an entire magazine just trying to gun down one enemy. Like these guys just face tank your ranged weapons like no tomorrow. And so I kept finding myself running out of ammo and then still having a lot of enemies to kill. And eventually I got used to just using the melee weapons, and then the only time I'd pull out the guns was for the boss fights, because the bosses would do like a variety of things and the guns were easier than using the melee weapon. But eventually I thought to myself, like, well, I bet that you could even learn to hit these flying enemies and be wary with the bosses when you just have a sword. And so I took all the guns off. And like right away I realized the orbitals were pretty worthless. Like there was no point in having them, for example. And the missiles are great for damage, but they're so slow that by the time they reach the enemy, it's like, it takes them 5 minutes to get there, and in some cases you can kill something just by hitting it well before the missiles would ever arrive. So ranged weapons are pretty garbage. I just took them all off, and then I realized that I got like 200 units faster or whatever because they have weight. And so they are literally weighing you down. They are slowing you down in every single metric, because not only are they making you physically slower, they're also killing the enemies more slowly. Because you got to empty out a whole magazine on one guy and then reload the you got to reload, get me another magazine, then you hit the next guy, and by the time you've gone through all four 4 or 5 magazines, you're dry, and there's still like all these enemies standing around. So yeah, it's safe, but it's incredibly slow, and the guns are just not working out for me. So they added some things. They added like a detonator, for example. And the detonator's kind of funny because it's like, yeah, you fire your weapon and then you wait like 5 minutes and then it explodes. And I just don't really see the purpose of that. When would you want to fire a time bomb in like an active combat situation? Like, when would that ever be preferable to just like a regular bullet? But they added it for the variety. And at this point, it just feels like guns are like a formality, like something that the developers have grudgingly accepted. Because what I've really discovered is, as much as this is a valid complaint if you wanted to play with guns, playing with the melee is a lot more fun. Because all the enemies are doing melee, and so you have to be a lot more aware of, like, what are they doing? Like, oh, no, here's this attack coming, and you can see the enemies much closer, like, they're all right there in your face. So you're ducking and weaving a lot more, and, like, I've got this shield, and it's not very useful, because most of the time if I see an attack coming, I can move away from it, and I don't have to use the shield. But if I'm feeling lazy, I could just block with the shield, you know? So there's so many tools given to you, and so much variety offered with the melee. Oh, there's also, like, a super power-up that you get, where if you kill enough enemies, then you just go, like, super mode for a while. And then you just chop up your enemies left and right all willy-nilly. So, yeah, melee has every possible advantage. Guns are absolute donk. It's no point in having them. You should just remove them all. They're really not doing anything for you. And then, I don't know, they've kind of done some things where they've added some, like, well, these are, like, guns-only upgrades. But what's funny is that the guns-only upgrades don't give you a bonus to your melee attacks. So if you equip those, it's a trap, because you will run out of ammo. Like, you're almost guaranteed to run out of ammo, or be stuck in, like, stupid reloading scenarios, or just waiting for ammo to recharge. Like, you'll be severely hampered, and then you can't switch to your melee weapon because the gun-only builds don't buff melee at all. So it's terrible. Like, the game really revolves around melee, but they give you these guns like it's not bad for you. That just frankly is. But anyway, though, so like I say, it's more fun to play with melee anyway. I have had more fun since getting rid of the guns. I honestly don't want to go back because they'll just make me slower, and I don't expect that they'll really help me much throughout the game anyway. So I don't know. I may check out the detonators later, but at the moment I'm kind of what the heck? The game has trained me to just swear them off. They're wasting development time by adding more guns right now. They'll have to rebalance or something. As far as the multiplayer thing goes, I guess the actual like guns, the standard guns are not really hit scan. They're like just really fast raycast or something like that. So they can miss, but having started playing with the shields, I think if you were to do multiplayer, really my expectation is that a player with a gun is just going to be able to prevent the much more powerful melee fighters from recharging their shields as easily. Because as long as they take a little bit of damage, and the guns do a little bit of damage, then you can't recharge your shields. So you could have, like, if they do like team fights, then I could envision like 2 melee fighters, 1 gun guy, 1 ranged fighter. And the guy with the gun, like, you'd pick a target and try to focus him down, and the guy with the gun would just have to occasionally clip the enemy a few times, just so their shields don't recharge. And then that would be really valuable as like a supporting role, but I don't see them as being like the primary damage dealers. There's no way. Which is also why it's pretty lackluster in single player, because you are the damage dealer. You're the only one doing damage, and so like trying to prevent the enemy from regenerating shields is not that big of a deal. Yeah. So anyway, though, this mission with the rockets is pretty funny, because if you don't complete this activation of whatever this radio tower or whatever this is, it's like in the shape of a cross. If you don't finish praying to this radio tower before a rocket hits you, then you just have to stop. And one of these radio towers is like right next to one of the rocket launchers, so you have to like lead the missiles over to another section and then zip in real quick and then like turn on the radio thing. It's a little wonky, but this mission is also really chaotic. There's just explosions everywhere. Let me see. They added robot enemies, and those are pretty cool. They also added like an underground facility map, which is pretty cool. They added a bunch more music, and the music is pretty bumpin'. I've been enjoying that a fair amount. Like I say, the guns thing is like I lay that against it. Like, man, that's frustrating, but ultimately I'm still happy with the game. Like, ultimately, I'm still enjoying myself. It's not quite the experience I was expecting, but it is still a good experience. So, and it's been improving and getting better. And I kind of dig some of this stuff. I like this ocean platform. This is kind of a cool map. And there's a mission where you're on like a dam, and then that's kind of a cool map too. You gotta stop these reactors from exploding in your face. I don't know why they're exploding exactly. Something about some guy with a gun shows up, and I don't know. I'll fight that guy eventually. The poor fool, he'll be using a gun, and I'll just be using this axe. Which, that does crack me up, though, when it's like the far-flung future, and it's like, well, what do we got? It's like, well, I got a hatchet and a shield. Like, I'm gonna crush you. I'm gonna stab the, like, where's our battleships and our where's my air support? Like, where's the airplanes? But then once you get into that, it's like, an airplane that flies in and drops off a really heavy payload and flies away. That would become the meta, wouldn't it? It sort of defeats the robots. That's why a lot of times I think Armored Core's explanation. I can't remember exactly what their in-canon reason was for having robots be the primary thing. Something like that. It's like an alien technology or something like that. Or I can never recall. It's not the most heavily story-based game. I could tell you more about the politics of the corporations than I could about the exact history, but I'm sure someone who's way more into the Armored Core lore could explain where exactly the Armored Cores come from and why they are so dominant. But yes. What else of significance? I guess I did want to talk a little bit. I didn't want to do another video specifically on politics. One thing that's dangerous is, like, it did too Greg in your ears, and so the first one had like regular viewership and it was political, and then the second one had more viewership than usual, and it was also political. And so YouTube tries to bait you into these sort of controversial videos where it's like you talk about things that are people are invested in. They engage with. They want to tell you why you're wrong. This sort of thing. And well, it looks like it's better for your viewership, and you have more engagement and all this and all that. It's really not good content for people. Like, I have my opinions, and you could agree or disagree. I think a lot of people aren't really focused on politics in such a way that you could really discuss policy and have anything of substance going on. A lot of it's more like paranoia and fear and dogma, ideology, that sort of thing. It's not really anything meaningful in the grand scheme. It's like really important to people in power because they need you to believe in the dogma, but it's not important to like you or me. So that's where most people are at with these types of things. And so, like, I have my own takes on things, but it's just based on whatever reading I've done, and what can I say? There's only so much that I could say, and to go on like that, people eventually get crazy. They fall into these weird rabbit holes. The creators themselves will, and then spend every single day trying to figure out some new audacious thing to discuss. And it takes a little bit of shamelessness, I think, really, to talk so frequently about things that frankly just upset people. But one of the comments on the last video did bring up, they were talking about like, well, like I've got these problems, I'm worried about employment and stuff like that. Like, why would I vote for the Democrats over the Republicans? And this is one of these interesting things, I think, that a lot of people don't really quite grasp, because they believe in the branding. And so the Republican voters often think that the Republicans are like better for business and for the economy, because that's what the Republican branding insists. And then the Democrats often believe that the Democrats are somehow more sympathetic to the poor or the lower class. And that's also really kind of a quirky, long-standing branding thing. The truth is that the Democrats haven't really been a party of the people since like the 70s, maybe a little before. They don't really represent unions or anything like that anymore. I mean, you notice there's no unions in the United States anymore. It's because nobody really represents them like they used to. What happened was back in the 70s or around then, they had a presidential nominee. I can't remember who the name was. But the Democrats didn't used to choose their presidential candidate through primary, if I've got this history right. What they did is they actually just got together and chose him through committee. And so they would say, like, well, Gerald will do this. He's a upstanding guy. He's in with these people, and he'll believe in this, and he'll do that. And so they would go in and they would support the unions and whatever, because that was what they felt would win in the election. And they were like, well, it's really important that we get these unions put together. So anyway, though, but they had one deal where they picked a guy who was just like terrible. It was like their Hillary Clinton of the time. And he just got steamrolled in the election. he was not even he was up against someone better than Donald Trump, and so he just got annihilated. And the Democrats said, well, shoot, we need to change the way that we do things. So they went through what are called the McGovern reforms, and so you can look this up if you're interested in the McGovern reforms. And this changed it to where instead of electing by committee, they elected by primary. And what happens in the U.S. is a lot of people who vote in primaries, they tend to be older and more affluent. They're more focused on policy and things like that, where they tend to be. And it's as we get to be online and they share information a lot more, we're finding a lot more turnout with less affluent voters and just more of the general public. They're taking an interest in the primaries in a way that hasn't been the case in the past. But once the Democrats switched over to doing primary votes for their candidates, they got to be more about like, well, we want a candidate who's like educated and more wealthy, and he's not really thinking about the unions. He's thinking about going to college and that sort of thing. So the Democrats for many decades now have been more about like, well, if you're having a hard time, you need to just go to college and become some kind of educated professional. And that's been not exactly on a really firm level, but that's just sort of been their approach to I don't know, poverty. Is they just believe like, well, sooner or later everyone's going to educate themselves out of poverty. And they've sort of just left a lot of rural areas to flounder, because the rural areas have a hard time getting access to good schools and things like that. And like they talk about, well, we're really supportive of black communities, but black communities also have a problem where if you live in poverty at all, then you don't really get access to a good school, and you're also not going to be able to afford education. So that democratic mindset of like, well, they'll just educate themselves out of poverty, it really hasn't worked for anyone in poverty. And then the Republicans kind of took over the suburban votes, partly because some of the voters felt betrayed because the Democrats weren't really supporting the unions anymore, and so they're mad at the Democrats, and partly because they got into the religious vote, where the Republicans really seized on the abortion debate. There was a really strong grassroots movement that kind of began in, I think, Wichita, Kansas, and then Republicans just kind of moved in and embraced that, and that's why they're like the Christian candidates now, just because of the abortion thing. I mean, you'll notice they don't really adhere to hardly any Christian values. It's like you can't practically find a commandment that the politicians haven't violated, and this is true for many people in power. It's one of the reasons I think why the Bible says don't get too worried about secular government. They're all the devil. Every single one of them is pure evil. So if you really try to pick a team, you're just siding with the devil one way or the other. But anyway, though, that's kind of how they became... Like, the Republicans never really adopted policies that were good for the general populace. They just adopted policies that were popular with more rural voters, specifically kind of like religious issues and that sort of thing. And they've been writing that for a great while. And so the Republicans aren't really going to offer you a firm populace. They lie about it, but they're really no better than anyone else about populism. So, in terms of like, if you're voting and it's not for something crazy, it's because you are seriously concerned about, like, I don't know, the well-being of the economy in a like real way. Then I get where that comes from. Like, I understand the history with that and kind of like what happened with the Democrats and why people don't believe in it. It is amusing, if frustrating, to see so many Democrats think that they are the party of the poor when it's like for such a long time. I mean, in the 90s, what they actually discovered with Clinton was that they could get reelected if they started adopting Republican policies. So you saw like Clinton really crack down on, he started arresting people for more petty crimes, and they expanded the federal prison thing, and they were really hard on poverty. They just kind of went to war with the poor and everything. And it was not great that he did that, but what he was doing is he was adopting a lot of Republican policies. They repealed Glass-Steagall. That was something that the Republicans really wanted to do. And so he wound up being really popular with moderate Republicans who were like, well, this guy will give me all these things I wanted. Because when the Republicans were in office, the Democrats would resist it, But when it was like a Democratic president saying like, okay, we need to do these things, the Democrats would get behind it. So suddenly all the opposition to these like reforms, these dangerous reforms, suddenly it went away and they could just do it. You know, they were like, all right, so the banks are free to do whatever. And then we got the housing crash. So the Democrats have been really, really opportunistic and just really, what can I say? There are valid points of criticism that you can levy against the Democrats, and a lot of things that are very concerning about the way that they've been behaving. They are not like you look at like someone like Donald Trump, and you wonder like, how can this not be a landslide? Like how can how can Joe Biden not already have so much support? And if you're really baffled by that, then all you have to do is just look at the history of the Democrats, and you'll see like, well, it's because these things they say they stand for, they haven't really stood for them in a long time. And many voters are, like Republicans haven't been given, Republican moderates are not often given, how can I say, a lot of people aren't given reason to believe it. They don't see any evidence of the things the Democrats say that they support. So you can complain about a lot of things about either side of the party, but there's like real things going on. And most of what people complain about is so detached from reality, I don't even know why. Like, I mean, I guess just because they hear about it on Fox News. It's sensational. It makes for good news, even though it's crazy and dumb. So, yes, I buried this kind of in the middle of all of this because as far as it goes, I really wouldn't know what else to add or what more to say as far as politics go. We're going to have the election coming up pretty soon. I'm not looking to pump out videos to take advantage of the elections or anything like that because it's not really what I ever got started doing entertainment to do. I got started in entertainment to be entertaining, and then Twitter and Facebook and YouTube all had different ideas. They wanted to do things a little differently. Anyway, back to the game. We can see here that I'm inside this facility. I kind of dig these metal hallways and everything like that. These are pretty neat looking, and also kind of reminiscent of Armored Core, which did a lot with underground cities. One of the premise of the game Silent Line was that there was like this AI satellite laser that was blasting people that traveled out too far from the underground cities. And these like orbital weapons are a big reason why people lived underground. So these giant underground facilities, it made sense for Armored Core, and it was just a good, as far as like game development wise though, it was a good excuse for like, why are we going through a level like this? Like, why are we running through the series of hallways, or why are we like in a city but there's no, there's like no sky or anything like that? So it kind of worked within the limitations of the software. This game kind of it throws you outside and whatever, and it's just like invisible walls. You can't go any further, and you accept that because why not? You wouldn't really want to get lost. Armored Core 4 did this hilarious thing, and by hilarious I mean terrible, where they actually removed invisible walls, and then they would throw you in the desert or the ocean. And I remember there was one mission where they were like, track down these battleships and sink them all. And a lot of times I would play that mission and then get really frustrated because I would miss a battleship somewhere along the way, and it would just float away. And in the chaos of like doing the mission, I would lose track of that one battleship, and then it would just be somewhere in the ocean. Like, anywhere. I don't know where it is. I don't have, like, a satellite network to tell me or anything to guide me to it. Like, just somewhere out there in the dang ocean, there's a battleship. And I would have to restart the mission because I'd never find it. Because all around me, as far as I can see, would just be water. Or desert, or whatever. And it was just like, okay, well, I've just been dropped in the middle of the ocean, and now I don't know what to do. So, I'll take invisible walls over an endless ocean any day. I will forgive the invisible walls. The deserts are certainly easy to design, but even at least in this game, you're given enough landmarks that it doesn't get too samey, so you can at least see where things are going. I kind of enjoy these lasers, just something to keep you on your toes a little bit. They don't do a lot of damage, but they will prevent your shield from coming back, and if you get too careless, you'll pay for it. And that's kind of the story of the game at the moment, is mostly, I find it's fairly straightforward. Just so long as you don't get greedy, you'll be fine. Just take some time to evade the enemies, but then this is me with no ranged weapons to slow me down and one of the faster engines on, so I don't know. I see some people have complained that they have a hard time and don't know how to cope with certain types of enemies, and I think probably it's that mindset of like, well, I want to do damage. And it's like sometimes you just need to back off and let them give you an opening, because they will, like, if you look at these guys, they raise their swords all the way up over their head and they're like, it's coming, boy, I'm gonna hit you. And you can let them hit you, or you could get out of the way, you know. Like, yeah, sure, you get an extra hit in if you just stand there and take it, but do you really need to get that extra hit in? It's up to you. So, yeah. What else is going on? I don't know. Still kind of dealing with mold a bit. It's been just such a hassle. There was like there were little patches of it up in the attic, is what I found, like little green spots. And I suspect that I probably did that to myself. The mold guys did come out and look at it, but this was like a couple of months ago. And so I think what happened is one of the things I've been doing to try and clear mold out of the house is I have like an attic fan. And I would run that, and it would actually clear the house up a little bit. But I think what it was doing is it was maybe just sucking mold spores up into the attic. Because now I've got to go up in the attic. And like I had to get I got some mold killer and sprayed it on there. And then I got a HEPA vacuum, and then had to get up there and run the HEPA vacuum while I sanded the mold off the thing. Because I'm just so sick of it. Like, sanding mold is really dangerous. It kicks a lot of spores up. But I've got a bunch of filters that I run, and so... I try to be cautious with it. My filters aren't strong enough to actually get all of it, so like the day after it felt kind of crummy, but then it sort of settled down. And I don't know. It's like everywhere. The house is a little old, and there's some do-it-yourself like bathroom installation stuff. So there's just been some problems with like, okay, the water's not being managed very well, and we've been uncovering all those problems. So yeah. Claudia's feeling a lot better, though. I finally managed to scrub away a lot of what's been in there, and I'm looking forward to having a cleaner house at some point. It feels like I'm getting to the end of it, because at this point, it's not just like, okay, the house has been sprayed with a bunch of mold killer, and we'll see how it pans out. It's like, well, I've physically found the mold, I've sprayed it, I've scrubbed it, I've cleaned it, and now... Anyway, mold's a pain. Mold's a real pain. It's very persistent. It wants to live, but is not too keen on your survival. It's a battle. Let's see. In other examinations of this game, I'm pretty happy with the way my robot looks at this point. They're still like things that I could equip. I get new items, and sometimes I look at them. But at this point, I like the robot enough that I really don't like. I'm really not specifically aching to gain more pieces. Because I like the way it looks, and would be happy if this is just how he stayed. But occasionally I get a new piece, and if on a knee-jerk feeling, I'm like, I kind of like that better, then I just swap the pieces. And that's just been how it goes. So that's really good, I think. There's enough variety. There's like a lot of straight pieces, a lot of rounded pieces, and so you kind of mix them together and get a really nice-looking design. And so that's really good. Like I say, biggest complaint is the guns. Otherwise, the game's shaping up pretty good. It's a pretty fun game. This is a hunt type of thing, which originally the premise was just like, yeah, there's always monsters around here, so you can always come back and kill these quirks for more money and stuff. And so now the context is like, yeah, there's always like people around here, so you can come by and kill them. I mean, they're barely even human anyway. Like, mostly they are robots, I think. I don't know if they're automated defenses. Maybe the lady told you that, but I'll be honest, at some point I kind of quit listening to what she was saying, because a lot of the dialogue is a little dumb, and their boobs are all silly and flop around individually, and I can't immerse myself in that. It's like, could you please put on a sweater? And not one of these weird sweaters that like also like wraps around your boobs. Just like, can you look like a normal person for 30 seconds, please? It's really silly looking, and the dialogue's still kind of like English as a second language, so it's not very well translated, and so it's kind of like you walk around. There's too many characters. Like, a lot of them feel redundant. You have like the tech genius, and then the other tech person, and then the other tech person, and theoretically, sure, you would have a lot of tech people if you're building robots. But, in Armored Core, like, I think they did it a lot better, where, like, instead of having you talk to the engineers all the time, they just had the operator, and it was just like, we're dropping you off, Raven, do your thing. And then that would be it. You were just respected as a pilot. No one would be like, the Quirkium is holding up the, I'm giving as much power as I can, Captain, but I can't give any more Quirkium than this. And you'd be like, I don't even know what Quirkium is. Point me to the nearest thing that needs to be shot. Like when I am the robot jockey. Just put me in the robot. Where do you want me to be? I don't care about whatever weird melodrama's going on. I'm not interested. I'm too old to be interested in any of these women. I don't. You're too weird. None of you. I don't see myself settling down with any of you. But that's another thing though too. Being a certain age, it's kind of funny. Like when I played Resident Evil, there's that joke where what's her name, Alice, at the end of all that game, she's like, so Leon, you want to come back to my place and like, spend some private debriefing time? And then Leon's like, no way. And then everyone kind of jokes about that. And they're like, yeah. But like, I was old enough when I played that game that I was on the same page with Leon. I was like, this girl's like 16. I'm like, yeah, like she needs to be shut down. You're like, no way. Like I don't want to get in trouble with the boss, who is the president. Like they'll fire me. We're not doing anything. But like lots of, young teenage guys, they're like, why would you turn that down? It's like, cause I'm a Leon's like in his 30s. Why is he gonna go for that? Like, what does she have to offer? Leon's a hot guy as it is. He probably could find other women if he's interested. He's probably got someone in mind, like as it is. I don't actually know the history of the game, but I'm sure Leon knows some people who would hook up with him if he wanted. So, same. I don't need this operator girl with the stupid floppy boobs. Give me the I don't know. Give me my peer. Give me a 30-year-old woman who isn't impressed by all this at this point. It's just like, yeah, it's worth the paycheck. Get in your Mac. Stop talking. They're like, you got it, ma'am. I'm with you. Anyway, though, I got a little carried away here. I just turned on my super stabber and then tried to super stab everyone, regardless of the lasers on the floor. It's funny, it doesn't kill the other robots. I like that selective lasers. It would be great if it did kill the other robots. It'd be like, security is activated. Like, oh god, the floor is lava. Oh no, I hate security. Which leads me, like, I gotta wonder, it must be too expensive. Like you would think that the real key to defeating me would just be to make the entire floor lasers. If the lasers will only burn me and not the enemy robots, they'd just be like, do not touch the floor, it is lasers. But then that would be really expensive, I guess. So they just have the floating lasers. They just have them installed in places. So, Anyway, that's it. That's it for the Greg in Your Ear, I suppose. We're just about the end of the footage, because this is all the stuff that is new, basically. And, well, I mean, it's not all the stuff that's new, but it's like the new missions, and I don't know. So anyway, thanks for joining me. I'll catch you guys later.